Residents of Paula and Carolina in Mpumalanga are among the hardest hit by coal mining pollution in the Highveld, according to a new report. It warns that coal mining is highly destructive to the environment and has severely affected the health of local communities. The report also highlights the vast scale of acid mine drainage linked to coal operations. In 2012, thousands of Carolina residents were warned not to drink tap water due to the high acidity. More than a decade later, the community's water is still contaminated. Joining us is Dr. Victor Munnik, who's the author of the report and strategic advisor at Life After Coal. Doc, thank you so much for your time and for joining us this afternoon. So this report was put together by Groundwork as well as environmental activists such as yourself. How dire is the situation with regards to pollution that is caused by coal in the Highveld?
Good afternoon, Katlego, and good afternoon, viewers. Just to say, I'm not the only author of the report. It was a team effort. But to answer your question directly, over many decades, a very big legacy of what we call ecological debt in terms of people's health and also in terms of the environment, particularly the water systems, as you mentioned, acid mine drainage. Quite a big legacy has built up. And we now find ourselves having to deal with it urgently because we are dealing with climate change and we are dealing with a just transition process as a response to climate change. So the situation is dire, but it's also nestled in a more complicated number of processes. The one is the rehabilitation, but the other bigger process is to deal with climate change through decarbonization. And that will mean using a lot less coal until we've completely phased out coal. And that in turn also has a number of socioeconomic impacts on the people who at the moment both affected by coal, but also dependent on coal economically. So all of these things are under discussion in the Presidential Climate Commission, which is one of the big topics of this report that tries to engage and explain what is happening in this commission and how are we doing as a country in dealing both with climate change and the transition from fossil fuels, particularly coal.
I mean, there was a court order in 2012 with regards to the contamination of water that's affecting those communities. What are some of the health issues that have really stood out for you in this report?
Yes, thank you. I think that, you're referring to the very dramatic effects in Carolina where for months that town was without a municipal water supply, I think about 7 months. But at the same time, there are impacts on people's health, which are very serious, which affect their health immediately, particularly children, respiratory diseases, things like asthma, bronchitis, also longer-term problems like various types of cancers, including lung cancer. And also it affects people's ability to work, to go to school, and to find employment, as they often fail the tests, the so-called.
All right, we're seeming to lose that connection to Dr. Victor Munnik, who is one of the authors of a report that has recently come out speaking on the coal pollution that is affecting the communities within the Highveld. Doctor, are you still with us?
Yes, I am.
All right, you may continue.
Okay, so to talk a little bit more about the report, is every year we as Groundwork publish a report on the state of environmental justice in the country. And for the past 5 years, we've focused on this process of the just transition, which is a very important one because it takes us to a possibility and an opportunity for fundamental transformation of our country and also our social system including the political system and the economic system. So that's why we titled it Systems Change. The systems, particularly the for-profit economy that have brought us into these difficulties, and it's not just climate change, but it's also difficulties like biodiversity problems, ocean acidification, the spread of plastics so that it's now found in animal and people's bodies. So there's a list of 9 of these boundary issues that are happening with our environment. And the report basically argues that we need, in our search for environmental justice, will also mean a search for new systems, new ways of producing that takes into account people's health and the environment, which at the moment the coal-fired electricity system does not do, and new systems of relating to each other. But also, as we've noticed in the transition where it happens in places like Komati and Mpumalanga, there is a need for a redistribution of resources. We live in a society that's highly unequal, as all South Africans know, but we need to look at the way that the elite controls the possibilities and opportunities. For example, how we can respond to climate change. And that, for us, that's one of the very serious issues at the heart of our ability to respond to climate change.
So, Doc, with that, you speak about that for-profit system, and I'm sure it's beyond just the social compact that companies need to have with how they operate within these environments where they are making profit. And of course, you're saying for that just transition, it's that opportunity cost between decarbonizing as well as looking at the socio-economic impact on the people who also depend on that coal. Do you find that companies are coming to the party within this just transition?
We actually find a disappointing reluctance to come to the party. So, for example, the power station that closed down in Komati, we do not see those coal mines or, in fact, the Minerals Council coming to the party and engaging with the damage that has been done immediately in that area, or the water systems, or indeed the number of people they employ, the employment opportunities that disappear as the coal mines stop producing, and so on. So we are, as environmental justice activists, quite frustrated with the level of participation of the corporates. And there are exceptions, but even where there are exceptions, there's no consistency. We're also very disappointed that there are still explorations for fossil fuels, for oil and gas in the oceans, whereas actually there's no carbon budget left. There is no reason to develop these fossil fuel resources and pump out more greenhouse gases into the atmosphere. So I think the corporate sector in South Africa actually has to move quite a lot for us to be able to deal with climate change and just transition.
And is there recourse for communities such as Paula and Carolina, especially with and how they've been impacted by these pollutions?
Yes, I must say I'm very impressed with the level of activism in these coal-affected communities. They have participated in the work of the Presidential Climate Commission very directly. They've undertaken monitoring and evaluation exercises. They've made inputs into the creation of a framework, and I think it's partly due to them that framework is so insistent on social justice during the transition. This is justice of procedure, of who will carry the benefits and will get the benefits and carry the burdens of the transition. As well as an insistence on restorative justice. Some of these communities live next to open coal mines, shafts that have been filled with water, basically through neglect, and these present very dangerous situations to the people living in those communities. So they've taken up these struggles. They have allied with other actors in the environmental justice movement. For example, the Deadly Air campaign, which is pushing government to enforce the emission standards that it's actually set in law, but it so far has exempted Eskom, for example, from these standards, with the result that there's much more pollution being released than there actually legally should be. And communities, particularly the activists in those communities, have reacted to it and have really admirably come forward and challenged both government and Eskom and other polluters like Sasol for their continued pollution, which we really find unreasonable.
Well, Doc, thank you for your time and also just for your activism together with so many others that are out there ensuring that communities such as Carolina and Paula do receive the justice that they need. Thank you so much for your time this afternoon. That was Dr. Victor Munnik, one of the authors of that report and a strategic advisor at Life After Call.